So I'll put up this article about one of the players, Jean Monnet from France, who was a member too, and he came from a very incredibly rich family, as his name would suggest. Monnet is all close to money, and he became a top banker with the League of Nations after the World War I. And made a massive killing off that from all the loans that countries were handing out to different countries involved in World War I. And a big player in all of that. And he also didn't believe that democracy would work. The people were too fickle. In other words, he didn't like the idea that everybody could have their own opinions and ideas about things. He wanted to standardize the world too. So he helped create this idea to work towards a European Union. He also knew because it would take wars to bring them to their knees. And that's why you had world wars. Now, how did these particular founders of the European Union get the Union in the first place? How did they bypass governments of nations to create this? And if you go back into their history, into a little bit that they give you about it, with I'm sure most of it excised out of it, it says the European is a geo-political entity covering a large portion of the European continent. It is founded upon numerous treaties. Well, what you're getting passed on now is more free trade treaties and so on, which naturally means supranational bodies have to be developed to make new laws. It says undergone expansions have taken it from 6 member states to 28. As distinct from ideas of federation, confederation, or customs union, the main development in Europe depends on a supranational foundation. And the guise they used for it was to make war unthinkable and materially impossible. Remember interdependence? You've heard that term over and over again. It says, and reinforce democracy. Well, that's the lie part, because they don't really believe in what you think is democracy. And it goes on about the different links. I'll put them up tonight to the European Declaration and so on. The principle was at the heart of the European coal and steel community. That's how they first started it, by getting big international corporations to amalgamate together into a community, not a federation, but a community, you see. And it was called the ESSC in the Treaty of Paris, 1951, following the Schuman Declaration and later the Treaties of Rome. That's another one that did the Treaty of Rome, establishing the European Economic Community. So private magnates formed this corporation, basically. And that started off the European Economic Community. And then the European Atomic Energy Community joined it, you see. Then remember, getting back to the Lord Alfred Milner group, they wanted the system of world domination to be run on the British system of how Britain was already dominated with this empire at that time, with a small group of people in London running the whole show. And they also called themselves secretive terms, and they didn't want the public to even know they existed at the time, that they were behind so much, including the Boer War. And again, their historian admits that they were behind the Boer War, and they drummed up from the Boer War times propaganda right up to World War I against Germany to get people ready to go to war with Germany, because they wanted World War again, to bring folk to their knees. And that's part of the reason they're given in the Europe Declaration for the European Union for its creation, to make war unthinkable. It sounds quite natural. You thought, oh, that's a good idea, but didn't tell you that they helped cause the wars in the first place and profit mightily from them, all the corporations involved and private individuals. So they formed a community. Well, they call it the European Community, you see, now. So it goes from European coal and steel community to the European Community, a political entity, you understand? And to get from there to there, a political entity, you must then form supranational bodies that eventually duplicate everything national governments do, but departments, until you are the supranational government. And that's how they did it. Clever, eh? And then they're going to their next phase now with amalgamation of Canada, the US, Mexico, and other countries in Latin America, and various other countries, including Japan, and bring them into the next part of the treaty, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, for this new supranational community, which is government, basically. Because then they'll have to say, well, it's so complex now, we'll need to establish it and declare it as an actual government itself. You understand? That's how it's done. And they wrote about this again through their own historical records by their own historians who published on them. Amazing, isn't it? But you won't hear it in the mainstream media, because the mainstream media, most of the top reporters all belong to this private organization. And the whole intention was never to let the public know what was actually ever really going on. Isn't that clever, though? Eh? You got to admit it. All deception, of course. All deception. It's like the definition of conspiracy. That word has been, it's made a kind of a joke now, because the CIA back in, I think it was the Kennedy assassination, actually said to put out the term conspiracy to brand all people who were questioning things, the official reports, as nutcases. And they're still prattling about it today, of course, with what's happening in the world. Oh, you're part of the conspiracy movement. And unfortunately, they've made sure the conspiracy movement, as they call it, has been completely diluted. And to be made into a laughing stock, we're adding all the space aliens, and there's even ghost folk in it, and shadow people, and all this nonsense they put into it, until it's all laughable, you see. It's all laughable. That's counterintelligence, that's what you call it. But the definition of conspiracy is two or more people meeting in secret to make a plan, which they'll follow through on, which would be detrimental and against the wishes of all those it will affect, meaning the general population. That's exactly what it is with this. Let's create a little commission, you see, a community, and then you take over whole nations, you see, under a European Union, then a Far Eastern Pacific Rim group as well, set up by the CFR group again, since World War II, and the one for the North American Union as well, which is all amalgamated into TPP. One group running the world. Running it properly, mind you, and they'll give you a new idea of democracy, and you still think you're a Democrat. Well, they've given gay rights, and they've given this rights, and so... No, they're omitting what democracy is all about, to benefit all the people, folks. And if you can't plan on surviving, even economically, you ain't going to be a happy camper, Now with your children, if you can afford them. Mind you, they have all these social plans, all pre-planned, because once they have risen to their heights, and you can see it in all directions as they push with the different groups to ban willy-nilly, as you call it, procreation for children, and eventually only certain folk will be given authorization to breed, you see. Because eugenics is a big part of the elite's belief system and historical system as well, as you can read any history books, even in religious books too, for that matter. So we're living in a make-believe world planned by think tanks and pushed and implemented through their institutions, including educational systems, all standardized through United Nations groups. And so on. It's quite something, isn't it? It really is something. You got to admire them. Men of vision, as I say, they call themselves. The general public, the silent majority, kind of drift. What they say in their own words is, well, they go, they breed, and and they go off and do their own things, and they're kind of happy and blah blah, and their children grow up and hopefully take over, blah blah. But they don't do anything with their lives, really. It's only these guys, the movers and shakers, matter to the boys at the top. The movers and shakers. The guys who are bold. They love knights. That's why they all knight each other and all that. They love getting knighted. They have a quest and a mission. They're men of vision. and they do things audaciously, things that the general population members would never do. Oh, that'd be unthinkable. They'll do it, you see, including causing wars if need be. So how can you possibly compete with that with any other system, of course? Especially when you have a system that has given the reality to all those around you. And very well implemented too, I might add, because the general population will tell, oh, I don't want to hear that, it's too, they don't want to hear it. They're trained already. Like Sunstein said about his pals in neuroscience, how they train society with their default positions. So certain things are mentioned and they go right back to their default. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. You see, upsets them. Total war means total war. And the first one, which you must get, is complete domination of the mind. That's so important. Now remember, folks, to use cuttingthroughthematrix.com website. Lots of information going back many years on lots of these topics to make sense of what really is happening without the nonsense, you see. And remember, you can buy the books and discs at cuttingthroughthematrix.com website, or you can donate as well. It helps me tick along through crisis after crisis here. And hopefully we'll all benefit in some way from this information. From Hamish myself from Ontario, Canada, it's good night to be your God or your gods go with you.